How can the visual and performing arts support students through their school transitions? Well, speaking as an adult third culture and cross-cultural kid who attended numerous public and international schools, I can tell you that the arts, especially the performing arts, were vitally important to my mental health through my many school transitions.
My parents tell us Xerox is moving us to Panama City, Panama. I'm gonna be the new kid again.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth, aka Lisa Liang, and I'm delighted to be co-presenting with Anzara Melman on this topic. Anzara has the perspective of a TCK who's about to embark on the transition into college, who has already created artistic work as a singer-songwriter about what it's like to experience a lot of transitions. Whereas I have the perspective of a professional actor, published writer, and producer of theater and film who didn't create any artistic work about my upbringing of constant transitions until I was middle-aged. So you're getting the POVs of two women at different stages in life, both for whom the performing arts were crucial to our healthy development as we grew up, but who creatively expressed our personal experiences at completely different times in our lives. I think Anzara started doing it at the right time, when she was experiencing those transitions as a student. I wish I had done the same. So here's the story of my life in the performing arts as a student in a nutshell. Books, movies, theater, and writing provided escape during numerous upheavals and demands on my identity as I grew up in different cultures, transitioning from school to school, between countries, and sometimes in the same country. The terms global nomad and third culture kid did not exist when I was growing up, or they were not being used. So there was no guidance whatsoever to help our family psychologically with the many moves. So there was no help from any school for kids like me going through school transitions. Luckily, for my brother and me, our parents love the arts, and I sincerely don't know how I would have coped without the escape and creative immersion my favorite forms of performing arts and storytelling provided. Theater in particular allowed me to express my emotions in plays behind the safety, the literal costumes of fictional characters. It was also the one way I felt truly seen and heard, even though I wasn't playing myself. That's the great thing about acting and other forms of artistic interpretation. They provide a protective shield and a channel for creative expression. The transition to college was the hardest, and that's true for so many TCKs. College theater saved me. I'm a zombie by day, and then I come alive for auditions and rehearsals and performances. I get cast in leading roles, and I make friends at Wellesley. Because in the theater, everybody's weird. We use our imaginations to create a world that we step into together. Kind of like being dropped into one that you have to adapt to. The arts provided escape and community and showed me how powerful it is to spark recognition in the audience or viewer, recognition of something we know or feel but haven't seen depicted before. That feeling of I exist because someone else has depicted something I know fundamentally that I haven't witnessed in any art form until now. As A.S. Byatt says in her beautiful novel Possession, how true it was that one needed to be seen by others to be sure of one's own existence. The arts can do that for us, even when we're not the ones creating it, even when we're alone. But it's crucial for students to feel safe to express themselves, particularly when they're experiencing added stressors, like the upheaval of school transitions. Moving from school to school can make a student reticent to dive in with their opinions on anything because they're always readjusting to their surroundings and learning the new social rules. They might overcompensate by censoring themselves. I sure did, and I know I'm not alone in that. This brings us to another common TCK experience. Many third culture kids have parents and teachers and school administrators who dislike hearing any complaints about a global nomad upbringing. To the adults, it's as if any complaint is a declaration of total unhappiness with the nomadic life in general, when that's not always the case. The student just needs to express the hard parts, because we all need to do that for our lives, or it festers and can ultimately harm our mental health. In my case, by the time I reached my 30s, years of treading carefully were overwhelmed by a need to express myself truthfully, and not just by interpreting a character on stage or screen. I began writing personal essays that were published. I co-hosted a podcast about the mixed race experience, and created a solo show about my life that's now on film. I just wish I hadn't waited so long. I wish I had felt safe enough to start doing it in my youth. So my urgent petition to you, the international educator and or parent, is to encourage your students or kids to express themselves in some creative form. Because while sports and academic learning and non-artistic extracurricular activities can be invaluable in helping the student to have community and connection and learn teamwork and individual achievement and tenacity, all of which supports their well-being, the visual and performing arts allow them to acknowledge heartfelt truths about themselves and the human condition, which I think every last one of us needs to do to maintain our mental health. International students' coping skills are regularly put to the test. We know this. In Alvin Toffler's book, Future Shock, he explains how the total effect of each move is one of mourning, in which one feels depressed and helpless. It can be a traumatic experience for a youngster, especially an adolescent who's beginning to form strong friendships with peers that they then lose. In my case, I adapted by going numb to loss very quickly. It became a buried ache that I denied. As you likely know, since there's been an explosion of research on the subject, the coping mechanisms that third culture kids and other cross-cultural kids learn in order to handle transitions can be unhelpful and even harmful in their adulthood. The visual and performing arts can provide a grounding, a consistency, a sense of belonging that is invaluable to the student. Even if the new school doesn't provide classes in the art form the student loves, parents can look to community theater, local classes, or online resources for the student to engage in. Now, as an adult, on top of writing and acting and producing theater and one film, I also help people to tell their own unique stories for the page or stage. And I do this because, in my opinion, the arts are the best way for people to express experiences and emotions that they would not otherwise feel safe to explore and share. The safest way to express themselves is by interpreting someone else's work, like in a play with fictional characters or a dance someone else choreographed. Work that allows the student to express true emotions within the guise of a role and costume. Or with visual art that's abstract or metaphorical or cathartic to create without literally depicting scenes from their own lives. They can also create original work that tells their own story. The artistic form remains the conduit and the buffer for the person's story, message, feelings, and needs, because they pick and choose which parts of their story to tell and how. Of course, it takes courage to perform or to share our visual art, and that's something for which young people deserve support. Not only because it's brave, but because it is good for their health. We already know arts engagement reduces stress. Per a study by the University of Florida and other studies, arts engagement reduces loneliness and isolation. It supports coping and emotional regulation. It can stimulate physical movement. It can support cultural identity, including cross-cultural identity. It enhances social supports and it improves quality of life. It does this by helping students to make meaning. It helps them to engage emotionally and learn empathy, to transcend themselves and feel that they're part of something larger and beautiful and that connects them to others. Pray tell, why would any adult not want that for their students or kids? It takes even more courage for people to express their own personal stories and feelings. And young people deserve even more support for that. Whether they express themselves via visual art or performing art, the point is they're expressing their truth, which can be cathartic and even therapeutic for them, via art, which can be cathartic and therapeutic for the people who witness it. And that can lead to connection, sometimes in the form of new friendships, alliances, mentorships, connections that will help to support and guide the student as they navigate school transitions. As I learned when I created Alien Citizen, my theatrical solo show that's now a film about growing up as a TCK and CCK, you can create art from the simple need to express yourself, but if you give it all you've got, it could transform into something bigger and better and beyond you. And the younger you are when you do this, the more integrated you may become as a person in your own skin. I wish I'd had the courage to tell even parts of my story in high school, the way Anzara did in her lovely, relatable album, Dandelions. I encourage the educators and parents who are viewing this to encourage your students and kids to tell stories from their lives in some art form. And not just for a college essay, not with a result in mind, but for the sheer creative fulfillment and self-affirmation that comes with making something and expressing oneself at the same time. If you're afraid that encouraging your student or child to express themselves via the arts will open up a can of worms, take heart. They can engage with the arts by writing or acting or dancing or singing as characters who aren't them. Or they can create visual art that's abstract or in which the meaning is only fully clear to them, and that will help them to let off steam by expressing themselves creatively, without confronting you with some hard truths about their lives. Except, of course, as adults, and especially as educators or parents, we are responsible for our kids' well-being. It is our job to listen, to create a safe container in which they can tell the truth. Because everyone needs that for good mental health. And youngsters don't have the psychological development of adults. It's wrong to expect them to handle the difficulty and even pain of transitions the way an adult might be able to. And let's be real, how many of us are fantastic at handling the pain of transitions? If it's hard on us, it's ridiculous to expect it to be easier for kids, to expect them to bounce. They're not balls. They're human beings. And they need the adults around them to be a safe place where the kids can be themselves. That's what we all needed when we were growing up. Arts engagement can be that safe space when the adults can't. I also need to acknowledge that countless people around the world through the ages have had their creativity squelched and even crushed by other people, often adults, who made them as youngsters feel inadequate and lesser than in their creative endeavors. And this does very real damage because creativity is a non-negotiable necessity to foster and maintain mental and physical well-being. So if by any chance you know a student whose artistic expression was stifled by someone who criticized or rejected it, I encourage you to help that student find another creative outlet or create a container for it yourself. If a student loves to perform or create visual art and their work has been criticized or rejected, can you support that student? Gather even one other trustworthy adult to help. Create a class or an after-school container in which students can perform or create visual art for the sheer joy of it, and not fear criticism or rejection. There are online resources that can help. the internet has a good side. Your students and children will look back on your support with gratitude as adults. We're here to create, not destroy, in my opinion. And they may create something that helps all of us. You never know. Most importantly, it will teach them to honor their own stories and feelings and creative impulses. And I know of no better way to support them through all of their transitions.